Hello, you're welcome to Radio FM 80 Australia. And today is a bit different because we're actually broadcasting at 2 o'clock Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria time. And that's because our guest lives over there in Colorado, United States, and it'd be 10 o'clock at night for her. So we made it that much more attractive for her to come on board and still get her beauty sleep after the show. And so, first of all, this guest has come courtesy of Julia and an arrangement that came about a couple of years ago when Julia was co-author with a number of other ladies to present a book. And of course, publishing a book does require certain narratives and certain connections. And as a result, that's why we got Adriana, because she helped tame the girls, so to speak. So with all that, I'm going to pass you over to my mate, Julia, to have a chat with Adriana.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Dreaming the New Dream, and welcome Adriana Monique Alvarez. Welcome on the show. Yes, to our audience, Adriana is she's the CEO and founder of AMA Publishing, and is an international best-selling author, and has also been seen in Forbes, Huffington Post, Fox, ABC, and NBC. She mentors high-level coaches, consultants, and a couple of years, just only 2 years ago, she also started a book publishing business to rival Hay House. Welcome, Adriana.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Same here.
Great. Yeah, and I'm excited to hear about this, how sort of between the start and the beginning. So I understand that when you were 19, you finished high school, and instead of going to university or working as an apprentice somewhere or as a job, you decided to leave America and go off to Europe, to Myanmar, to volunteer, to work as a volunteer there. What drew you there?
Well, I actually recently found in my grandmother's home a journal I had in high school where I just filled pages talking about how I wanted to see the world. And the particular opportunity to go to Myanmar, it came up as like a summer trip. I could go volunteer, work with street kids. And so I immediately said yes, because I had no idea how I was going to get out of this small town that I'm from. But the opportunity presented itself and I was first in line. So that was my first international experience.
And what was that like? Because I mean, I think you come from the corner of Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is quite remote, and you went to Myanmar, which is also pretty remote, probably pretty backwards too. Which one was more modern?
Oh, well, I like to say that is the trip that completely rocked my world, because I assumed that everyone lived exactly the way I did. And when I got to Myanmar, I remember one day, going to that little switch that's on the wall that when you flip it, the lights come on, and it's this wonderful thing called electricity, and nothing happened. And I just thought, oh my gosh, something must be wrong. It's like, no, that's what happens. From time to time we don't have electricity, and from time to time we don't have running water. And that was when I really saw that people live at such a variety of levels across the globe. And it opened my eyes. And many people asked me, because obviously it wasn't easy, right? I was this spoiled, pampered, small town girl who just thought everything miraculously came together. And some people asked me, why did you keep traveling after that? Like, that wasn't enough to just, make you never want to leave the US again. But for me, even though it was difficult and it was a shock to my system, it made me hungry for more, because I knew in that moment, there's so much I don't know. And that really sparked curiosity in me.
And so from Myanmar, you went on to some other, what we'd call developing countries, Albania and Kenya. You just picked the hardest places, didn't you?
Yes, yes, my husband likes to tell me, you places that, people don't typically, go for a holiday. So it was after I went to Myanmar, I actually had an opportunity to go to Central Florida in the middle of nowhere and learn how to live in any situation. I mean, they taught me everything you can imagine. And within 30 days, you know, I was set to handle it all. And when I was getting ready to leave is when there was a lot of conversation about the Kosovo crisis. And a lady walked into the room and said they need a volunteer at the Tirana orphanage, the capital city. They need a volunteer immediately. So I raised my hand, and next thing I came back to Colorado, to the same small town. I bought the plane ticket, packed my bags, and off I went.
Wow. Into what? A refugee zone from the war zone.
Yeah, many of these kids had been orphaned, you know, because their parents were lost in the war. I discovered after I arrived that I was the only adult who was living at the orphanage 24 hours a day, around the clock. So I was with 120 kids ages 5 to 18. And we were figuring it out together because I was a kid myself.
That's pretty rough. I mean, you know, that one puppy can keep me up all night, let alone 120 between 5 and 18.
Yeah, it reminds you of Peter Pan, doesn't it?
Speak English?
None of them. I mean, they had a few words here and there from movies. They knew Italian. They knew everything else. So needless to say, I learned Albanian within 3 months because they wouldn't shut up and stop repeating. And so I had no choice, right? But to learn this language because my head was aching and I thought I've got to have this bridge of communication. And so I'm grateful that they did that, because to this day, you know, when I go visit Albania, I can interact and I can have conversations. And so it was a huge gift.
Wow. That's just crazy. What organization put you in there?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't travel through organizations like Peace Corps or anything like that. I just showed up and said, how can I help? And the same was true when I went to Kenya. After 3 years in Albania, I was actually on a plane to the US to see my family. And the woman I was sitting next to was none other than Burmese. And she could not believe that I had went to Burma, you know, Myanmar. And she told me, oh, I'm living in Kenya and there's plenty of opportunities for volunteering. And she said, why don't you come live at my house? So I turned right back around, went to Kenya. I lived with her and I was a volunteer at an HIV baby orphanage there.
Okay. So what, inland or are you down towards the ocean at Mombasa?
The first 3 months I was in the middle of nowhere. I was out in the bush. I can't even tell you where I was at. And then after that, I came into Nairobi and I was right there in the heart of it all.
Yep.
That's amazing. What's the Burmese woman doing in Kenya?
She worked for the UN.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I guess going from Albanian, you know, forests, landscape, to Kenya, where like we've been, and you know, they say you can't even go out at night if you're in the country because there might be wild animals fighting in the grass wanting to eat you while you're picking flowers. Well, tell us about that part of it.
Well, I will tell you, I tell people to this day, I'll never forget when I arrived, they told me, whatever you do, don't walk in the grass because those mambas will get you. And I didn't go out after dark. That was what I knew for sure. There were certain things you did differently when you were in Kenya.
You're talking about the snakes here, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And what was it like taking care of the kids? I mean, was that sort of during the HIV crisis, or was that sort of post, or you know, in terms of time frames and support for the kids and help? I mean, were they just, you know, were you just helping them to just survive, or was there a program to get them better?
Well, we were striving for all of the above, but the main job I had was to hold babies, because babies were found every single day, you know, under a bush, you know, under a bridge. because they were abandoned. And so we had so many babies that were not getting enough touch and enough love, that was really what was the most critical thing they were facing. That was worse than the HIV. And so literally all day, every day, I would hold a baby for an hour. Maybe I'd feed them, maybe I'd play with them. And then I just rotate new baby every hour. And that was what my job was, is to give them human touch. And, you know, when I was holding them, the thing that I would focus on is just letting them know how loved and wanted they were, and that this life, you know, was theirs to decide what they wanted to do with.
Well, that's so inspiring. You're like, you know, you're like a mini, a junior Mother Teresa here. And
well, I don't know about that, but I did my best.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. Well, you've done. I mean, I've dreamt about working in orphanages, just haven't got around to it. I've got sidetracked, got told to do other things instead. So I am a bit jealous there, because you've managed to achieve that. So from volunteering extensively and holding babies to becoming a business coach and a best-selling publisher, sort of that's quite a big difference, isn't it?
It is. It is a big leap, and it's one that was not easy for me to bridge, but I would say it was a combination. I had for years thought that really I came back because of the pressure I was experiencing. You know, at some point you need to grow up, you need to get responsible, you need to figure out your life, you need to get a career, you need to get married, all those things. And so I was 27 years old and I was beginning to get a lot of that. And but now when I look back, I see that it was just time for the next season. And part of what led to that is I got malaria in Kenya. And so when I came to the US, I had to figure out quickly what I was going to do. And so business is in my blood. My parents are entrepreneurs, my grandparents. And when I thought about who I could help maybe the easiest or most effortlessly, I decided to help people like my parents. I helped baby boomers who were successful in business, but maybe weren't so good at looking at where business was going and how the internet played a role in that. And so that's who I focused on for the first 7 years I was in business.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And although it's not easy for people to see where things are going. I mean, I used to work for, we used to do a management consultancy. We'd have to predict and talk about the trends, but I can freely admit that we didn't always get it right.
So true.
But you probably had better experiences on that side, Adriana.
Thankfully, social media
ended up working for Forbes, so you must have been good at it.
Well, I felt like social media was where it was going, and thankfully social media did not let me down, because that's what we're still on today. And so what I found is that bringing in the social media and just more of a connection with the audience, this conversation, this interaction, allowing people to see who you are, not just what you do, that worked out. And then what really shifted that for me is I had 2 babies in 12 months, and I knew I couldn't baby my clients anymore. I needed to figure out how to do this better. And that's when I transitioned online and decided I was going to figure out how to leverage my time so that I could be a mom and carry on the business that we had started.
Yeah, and I think for the audience, I mean, this is why I brought Adriana on. You know, apart from the second time when I Facebook Live for her, the first time I experienced her, it was just like, oh my gosh, this person's like an Amazonian commander, and she's like got us on Zoom online, and there's 200 people, we've never met each other, and this woman's just stepping up there and just confidently telling us what the goalpost is, where we're going, what the timetable is, how it's going to do, exhorting us to believe in ourselves. And I think that was pretty much it. And then everything happened exactly as she promised. And I'm going, wow, you know, this woman can coordinate. She can make things happen. It's just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. I like the way you describe me. Some have said it in a less complimentary way.
Well, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yes, that's you know what I discovered on this path is that who we are at our core, you know, given a little love and encouragement, it's going to rise to the surface. And that's why I love what I do, because I find that when I get women together and I give them a little bit of encouragement and I demonstrate to them the belief I have in them, who they really are can bubble up and really shine and be seen by those around them. And that's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's in a nutshell why it works, because you know that magical ingredient, that faith, and seeing them who they are, and that they giving them that leverage is like the yeast in the bread. Mm. And it's interesting because in Australia at the moment there's all these discussions about breaking the gender models, because we obviously have had a lot of domestic violence, which is still an issue, and they're trying to educate even in the schools for kids to be able to break beyond those borders and stereotypes. And I guess like our show, Jeff, you know, we've got the Dreaming the New Dream, and we're also trying to platform and feature people, you know, like Adriana, who's unashamedly untamed, believes in herself, trusts her every mood, and hasn't been trained by the system. And Jeff, that's something you and I have in common as well. You know, you're a self-starter, and you found your own way, and I have as well. And I guess even with the economic structure and with all the uncertainty, you know, I often say to friends that life at the moment is like what polar bears we used to do a couple of years ago, you know, having to jump from one float to another, except humanity is like the penguins. I was just like, which way is that ice rift going? It's very refreshing to have someone like Adriana who just seems to know, you know, where she's going. How do you do that, Adriana? Sort of, do you have, I guess you must have your own internal spiritual guidance or system, GPS system?
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. You know, I've had this very real and deep connection to Source, God, whatever you want to call it. And it's like you described it, a deep knowing, a real deep knowing of, I like to think of it as a deep knowing what I'm connected to, as well as who I am and why I'm here. And it's allowed me to sort of create this tunnel vision of keeping the outside voices and noise out, because there's a lot of good information and there's a lot of good advice and there's a lot of well-meaning people. But at the end of the day, none of that can be directing my life. And so I stay true to this simple ritual and practice of getting quiet and tuning into the part of me that absolutely knows who I am and where I'm going.
And that's so valuable. I think for the audience, I might just sort of give a bit of background. So I met Adriana during the COVID lockdown time, and I think at that time you had already published a couple of titles, I think like Phoenix and was it sort of conscious mothering, conscious parenting? Maybe if you give an idea of the type of authors that you've been able to syndicate, group together, and get into the Amazon bestseller list, that might be really useful for the audience that's listening now and in the future.
Yes, we did a book, Trailblazers, we did Leaders, we did Phoenix and Empire Moms. And then I think when you came in, we were talking about Awakening and looking at the women that were part of birthing the new earth. And then after that, we did Visionary. And now what I'm doing, and each of those titles, those were dropped in and came to me by my daughter, Nina, who often is, I shouldn't even say often, we'll say 99.9% of the time, where my ideas come from. And just, it's a very clear hearing. Sometimes it's an audible hearing. And so I write it down and run with it. And now what I'm doing, instead of different titles like that, is I'm focusing on a series called The Younger Self Letters. And what inspired this was, in business, it's so easy to think that we're meant to lead with our knowledge and with our expertise. But what I really want to highlight and feature is the human and the person and the experiences, the heart and soul that is behind all of that. And so by having people write a letter to their younger self, we actually get to peel back those layers and let the mask down and learn who we're doing business with.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, because I think the I can have many identities.
Yes.
And I guess when we're writing a letter to our younger self, we're talking to our sort of, I guess, our hopefully most wise, not the most cynical.
Yes.
Jeff, have you written a letter to yourself before?
Funny enough, I was talking to a good friend of mine who lost a husband, and I suggested that she writes a love letter to him, you know, and look, if it might take a couple of days or it might just come automatically, but once you've done it and sign off on it, you'd be quite surprised. You could actually pick up another pen and paper and you actually might get the reply if you just take the time to take those thoughts and gather those thoughts and write them out. So I've got this funny feeling that actually works if you're prepared to do it and trust.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, if I sent a love letter to myself, no. I have. Did I tell you where when I was a youngster, used to be in bed at night and there'd be this figure standing in the door. And I suppose most kids, get scared of the dark and want the light left on. But there was this figure always standing in the door. It was years and years later. I'm talking about 30 years later. I actually was in meditations, and it was actually me who was standing in the door looking at my younger self. Yeah. I've had situations like that where we used to play, we called it paddle tennis. It's like table tennis come tennis. And sometimes a ball would go through this hedge to the next door neighbours, and I'd stop and look through the gap in the hedge, and I'd like freeze frame, And then years and years and years later, it was me who was standing on the other side of the neighbour's place looking back at my younger self. So I certainly believe in what you're saying there, Julia, about writing a love letter to your younger self when you've had that personal experience and felt it and seen it. But at the time when you're young, you don't realise it's your older self who's coming back to do it.
And I guess that the quality of what you'd write sort of almost goes towards what Rumi became very popular for, isn't it? It's not like you're going to give detailed instructions of what not to do, what not to eat, Before you go into that interview, make sure that sandwich crumb is off your eyebrow. It's not the job anyway. It doesn't matter. But yes, it would be that magical ingredient, wouldn't it? I think that's what often restores people's faith in humanity is just reading that kind of stuff and knowing that beyond all the external things that we say and do, the facade, that there is actually that affection and that love and consideration underneath that is not often expressed in the older societies, in the baby boomer societies. I mean, I think, to be honest, Adriana, your generation is actually pretty good at voicing its feelings, and we've learned to express appreciation quite a lot through the mindfulness practices and the Heart Math Institute and the Masaru Emoto that Jeff often talks about, and the awareness that the energy we put out there has a certain quality and that it will impact the present and the future, won't it?
Absolutely.
So what next, Adriana?
What next? Well, funny you should ask. So, I've been on this journey with Nina and some other of my guides, and against my my first choice, I'm really been feeling guidance to share what is basically been the underbelly of my experience and what has been foundational in everything that I do, and not just lead with the business side, to let people in on what that guidance looks like and feels like, and what it means to connect to the other side, and what it means to tap into our ability to go from limited to unlimited when we are connected to our angels, our guides, and our ancestors. And what I keep hearing is it's the ultimate act of co-creation when we are connected in that way. And so this obviously has put me in a very uncomfortable place, because I'm used to wearing a mask, and I'm used to having a role, and I'm used to being known for what I have done. And at first I was really afraid that it could lead to me losing my business, or, people just thinking I'm nuts, oh, we're going to talk to dead people now, but the more I talk about it, the more people I see are ready for it, and they're open. And actually just yesterday and today, I had the opportunity to be part of a group of leaders, 94 leaders from around the world, and most of them are in corporate or the nonprofit sector or education. And I was given a moment to voice this very thing. And I was shocked by how it was received. And while this might not be what people have necessarily sought out or thought about, when they hear it, based on what I've heard in the last 2 days, their face cannot hide what they are feeling inside. And in a very deep place, they know that that is accessible for them, that can be true for them. And so I am going to start to run monthly events where it's not me in the front of the room and me with all the answers and me leading the way, but the name that I was given is Guide by Your Side. And so we're not going to talk about how we connect all of this. We're not going to have a theory around it. We're going to do it together. And I can't tell you exactly what it will look like, but I'm trusting that I will be guided in the moment, so that we can actually experience and feel and know how thin the veil actually is, and how much is available to us at any given moment.
I'm going to put my hand up now. As a mere male, after all these years, I've actually tapped into the emotional pain body, and I'm empathizing with my partner on it, and I'm actually taking up all her emotions. I can feel it going through my body. And it's really, really painful, to the point that I can understand why males, we shut down and don't get into our emotions. It's and yet I'm just waiting for that, with a dark night of the soul, is that what would you call it, to break through? But in the process, I get constantly different music tracks coming through, different lyrics that relate, and it's quite profound. And it's just a case of, how far does this go? So I'm just putting my hand up on behalf of all the males on this planet, asking you two girls, how do you make that breakthrough, getting through that emotional pain body? Yeah. Because obviously once you get through there, it just flows through. I feel like it's about to flow through, isn't it? Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing this up. And what I found is that before I lost my daughter 3 years ago, I had no idea, obviously. I would have denied it completely, but I was not good at dealing with my emotions. And I would say I'm still learning that, especially the ones that we have been raised to believe are not the great ones, you know? And so going through grief, and for me, anger was a big one. And going through, like you said, that pain, that deep pain that you feel in every cell of your being. Number one, it broke through to the deeper parts of me. I realized that I was really only accessing a small portion of who I am because I only wanted to live in the good times and the happy times and the optimism and the positivity and the joy and the love. And I will say, yes, there does come a real point of breakthrough. And I remember when that happened for me. And it's not to say that there aren't moments or waves, but I think when we can sit in it and we're no longer trying to get out of it. We're no longer trying to work through it. And we're completely in it, and we actually can get to the place where we're welcoming it and letting it intensify. There is this, for lack of a better word, there's this magical moment when we realize that's actually what we're here for, that we're completely capable of it. And it just becomes the doorway into so much more.
Right.
So yes, don't escape it. It's not pleasant, but it's worth it.
Oh, it's a shocker, isn't it?
I'll second that. Yeah, I'll second that. It's energy is in motion. You have to suppress them, avoid them, won't help you, they won't go away. You've got to be present for them. And I think it's awareness, consciousness, and your own heart, be your own best friend, to support yourself through that. And it's in the end, the choice is pretty much acceptance or resistance.
That is true. And one of the most challenging lessons for me, because I'm highly independent and I can figure it out, I for a long time wanted to go through the grief and the pain and the loss alone. I didn't want to bring anyone down. I didn't want anyone else taking it on. And once I began to let people in and say, this is what this feels like for me, and this is how you can support me, or this is how you can just sit beside me, it transformed and transmuted my pain. And I'm probably going to get this quote wrong, but what I really learned is that trauma is not what happens to us. It's what's inside of us when there is no empathetic witness with us. And so the more that I allow others to witness me in my pain, in my loss, in my absolute darkest moments, the more I realize how absolutely loved and supported I am.
So the secret was to actually share it. Yeah.
Share it. Yes, absolutely. And I mean, this is something I literally just did a couple of days ago. Over the weekend, I had this wave of grief come over me, and we're getting ready to celebrate Mother's Day here in the US on Sunday. And I didn't quite connect the dots at first. And I was like, oh, Mother's Day is coming, right? It's all this stuff that can resurface. And I was feeling that temptation to go hide and to go isolate. And then I just decided, you know what? No. I reached out and I told a couple of people what support and love would look like for me. And it's actually, just pretty simple, like just stand right there, sit beside me. And within 24 hours, it completely lifted. And I wasn't I wasn't doing it so it would lift. I was doing it because I'm learning that that is part of the human experience. We didn't come here in this lifetime to figure it out by ourselves. We came here to co-create. We came here to do this together. And I'm learning what that looks like.
Mm.
And interestingly, someone was just saying the other day that one of my spirit guides was saying that humanity is actually one of the few realms where one has to deal with emotions. You don't on the other plane. So you might as well enjoy it, Jeff.
Well, I don't have to go through childbirth, so that's all right.
Well, you picked the right body for that. You've got other problems, though.
Oh,
well,
goodness.
tell them. What are they?
I'm not going to list them publicly for you. Plus, they're from my perspective, not from yours, so they're probably not valid for you. What I think is a problem might not be a problem for you. But anyway, Adriana, you've got 2 boys that you're raising, so I guess you could probably weigh in there.
Oh my goodness. Let me just say.
Testosterone.
Oh my
She's digging
goodness.
a hole, but she needs an excavator to finish it.
Whew,
Carry on.
seriously. No, yes. So, if there was ever any doubt that there are dramatic differences between, men and women, males and females, oh my goodness, yes, I'm living with a lot of testosterone. Even though I'm allergic to cats, and I probably have like bloodshot eyes, and I'm getting ready to hack up everything right now. I finally got another female in the house, so I'm just like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Is that bad, is it?
Oh, let me tell you. Yeah. Well, my boys are, let's see here, whatever we could call them, strong-willed, or we could, whatever term, we'll just add strong to the beginning. So yes, I have learned, a 4-year-old can bring me to my knees. Well, that's what I learned.
Yeah, but a cat, particularly a female cat, hello. They just give you the raw finger, don't they? It's like you're the servant. They're the princess come queen, aren't they? Hello.
That is the truth. In fact, her name is Princess Tiger Lily. So, I'm just lucky to be in this house.
Yeah, that's right. I got that one pretty quick.
So yeah, that's my situation.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then on top of that, you're also renovating a homestead or something, aren't you? Or you're learning to homestead. What does it mean, farm? Does that mean grow vegetables?
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say farming, because farming is next level, and I definitely don't think that I can approach that in this lifetime. But we're expanding the orchard already. My husband has now planted like 19 trees since we got here. And then we're doing a greenhouse and chicken coop and bees. But yeah, we've been remodeling this house, and I'm so happy to say that we're done. And I learned that remodeling is the only thing that exhausts me. I tend to be like that annoying Energizer bunny that's just going from morning to night and is perky and, happy to wake up at 6 a.m. But having a house full of like plumbers and people drilling and new floors being put in, it drove me to get an office outside the home. We'll say that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You can hide away from the 4-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
And the plumbers and the drillers. I think it's a really good idea.
It's worked
let's
out.
just move back to the
Hang on, one question. Hey, with all your travels around the world, when it comes to this interior decorating, Mexican come abode type construction?
So it's a combination, but I haven't been in charge. My husband has been in charge of everything. So if like friends and family will come over and they're like, oh, where'd you get this idea? And it was Derek. So we're sticking true to the style of the home, but also bringing in some, little bit of like modern, maybe spins or twists on it. But I would say, where the travels have influenced it is in our food. So food is like my very favorite thing. And so we continuously have our favorite dishes to remind us of all the places we've been.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Yours,
What's
Julie?
your... Yeah, sorry, just got distracted here. Albanian, what's your favorite Albanian food dish?
Oh my
I'll
goodness.
tell you my Kenyan one.
Okay, so, well, they have this soup, just fish soup in Albania. That's what they call it. And I absolutely love it. And so Derek actually recreated it recently, and it was amazing. Plus, I love their sea bass, so we have that often. And then I would say on top of that is just, a whole load of Italian food, because they're so close to Italy. A lot of that has come over.
Gotcha.
I might go to Albania at this rate. It's starting to sound a lot more interesting.
It is.
Very, very poor country, but.
It is, I would say, but I will tell you, in the last 25 years, it has changed dramatically. When I first went, compared to what it is now, like the capital city is one of the most cosmopolitan places in the whole region. We went to Croatia, we went to Italy, we went to Greece, we went to Montenegro, and I longed for Tirana. Tirana is just special. Now, I might get, hate mail for saying that, but yeah, Albania has some, it's a real gem. It really is, that most people just have never even heard of.
Well, next door neighbours to Greece, isn't it?
Next door neighbours to Greece, that's right. Yeah, and Turkey and Armenia. But yeah, so just coming back to your next project, which is Guide by My Side. Is that right?
That's right.
So if people are interested, will that be online or in person? And you said it was going to be a monthly meeting. How do people connect with you if they're interested in taking part in that?
Great question. So we're going to start it online, since most of my favorite people who are over on your side of the world aren't able to travel right now. So we're going to do it online, and I literally have been waiting for the guidance on it. And I actually just created the first event today, so I will be posting it on social media. If you're connected to me on social media or you join my email list, I'll probably pop something on my website. I will put the information there. And so, yes, I posted the first one, and now I can't remember which day it is, but it'll be popping up.
Oh, that's great. And I'm so pleased because, I wrote the chapter on interdimensionality. And as you say, we have to co-create. The world's a mess. We can't continue working the way we did, either just from emotions or just from the mind, or just meeting our physical needs and pretty much being in sort of love and compete mode. We really have to be able to tap into, that part of us that is greater, and agree to be here at this time. And, collectively, if we do that, we will come up with new ways of doing things, and hopefully we'll be able to get ourselves and our kids out of this mess.
That's right. And what's really coming through strong for me is taking the time to do this. It's easy to talk about, it's easy to know it would be good, but taking the time to do it, and taking the time to do it together. I can go through this practice laying on my floor alone, but when we come together and we're all in that space, this is what's going to allow us to connect to what's truest for us. And like you say, I like to think of it as have a higher perspective from the place that we had been operating. And every time I can have a little bit higher perspective, it dramatically changes the way I behave and the way I approach everything I do. And so that's what we're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. The energies and frequencies change. And I might just share, we had Elena Danan on the show a couple of months ago, and she she's in regular contact with her spirit guides, who actually happen to be from the Pleiades. And I think she'd actually done a Q&A in the book, and she said, oh, when we meditate, does it actually make any difference? Can you from up there see what's happening? And they said yes. When humans are meditating together, there's this beautiful sort of pinky orange energy that arises. So it's tangible. A tangible thing. So good on you for making that as part of your next sort of working chapter, to be setting up the guide by your side series. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Right. So if I was to put together a self-published book or whatever, what's the principles there? Do you like 12, 14 point font, or with double space and proofread, and then you submit it as a PDF or as a Word document, or how does it take place? Yes.
Well, I personally no longer work with authors outside of the Wall Street Journal collaboration, that Younger Self letters. But what my clients typically do is just look at what you want most. Why are you writing the book? What do you want to happen as a result? What I like to focus on is not really the aspects that you said, yes, all of that's going to happen, but what purpose does this book serve? And what I've found is that my clients, they tend to gravitate toward people who do feel like this is part of their life's work, is to get a particular message out, to create something that will outlive them. And so once that is solidified and vocalized, then the rest of it, all of that can be figured out. But it's really about, what are we creating and what is the life this book will take in the world.
Okay.
So pretty much with intent and heart, and the rest can kind of fit into different structures. But I guess, Jeff, Adriana's clients are other individuals who have set up their own publishing houses now as well. So there are quite a lot of them coming up. And I think, with technology, it is possible. And Adriana just figured out how to take an electronic PDF from Oblivion onto the top five bestseller list, which I don't know how long did it take you to figure that out, or did you just work behind the scenes and figure it out? It's just I was quite amazed when you did that.
Thank you. Well, I have to say, most of the behind the scenes work is really accomplished by my husband. He's got that ability to, that he's like that Capricorn German engineer kind of mind approach. And I'm the one who's out front, and I'm good with the people, and hey, this is what we're doing. And he figures out how we're going to actually execute what I promise. He tells me that all the time, I heard you on this live. Like, how are you going to do that? I go, I don't know. You'll figure it out. So that's our partnership, basically. He affectionately calls me Lucy from the I Love Lucy series. And actually, when I told him about this interview, I met him outside. He was up by the trees, and I said, I know this is going to sound crazy. And he goes, that's how you start way too many conversations. So yeah. That's
right.
That's how we do it.
He still loves you.
Oh, yes.
Happy spouse, happy house.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yes. You're the big ideas and inspiration person, and he's the one who actually knows how to deliver it with the nuts and bolts and the mortar and the bricks and the IT programs. Okay, there you go. Behind every leader is a very wonderful man.
So true. He's getting a good laugh out of that one.
Yeah, I got that one. Yeah. In front of a good man is a good woman, mate. Hey, so price set. How do you come up with a price set for a book, or how does that manifest in terms of setting prices?
Well, I have a business mind, and oftentimes when my clients come to me, they have a very big heart and they lack the business mind. So I'm always showing them, first we've got to look at the expenses of a book, because books are expensive. There's a lot of moving parts, right? So we've got to look at cover and editing and formatting and the marketing plan and whatever else this person wants. And so the very first thing I tell them, what do they want? And then what does that cost? And then what do you want to get paid for creating that outcome?
Yep.
And that's really the way I do it. And the other thing that I emphasize to my clients is this concept of energetic exchange. Is there needs to be an energetic exchange for what you are creating and what you're making possible for them. And if they feel good with that and they're aligned with that, then I'm happy and they're happy.
Okay.
Is there
So
a book that
the
you've
choice.
written, Jeff?
Okay.
Is there a
Hey?
book that you've written, Jeff, that you want to publish?
Oh no, I'm just acting on behalf of the people listening. I'm sure there's a lot of people there who've got thoughts of aspirations and don't know how to get up to the home plate to batter up and go around the diamond to come back to the starting point. So I was acting on their behalf, but I'm quite sure once I get through this pain body that I indicated before, anything's quite possible, Julia.
Yes, Jeff, I'm sure you will get through your pain body, and it is just a pain body. And Eckhart Tolle has written a whole book about the pain body.
Is it? Well,
And where it comes from.
Well, the divine masculine is moving into bringing in the divine feminine. That's what I sense is happening here. Anyway,
We can have a discussion about chicken and eggs later.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, to be a little more direct, I would say solo books, they really probably start around 10, 15,000. Yeah. And then that's also why we offer those collaboration books, so that people can sort of get the wheels turning and get things moving for a fraction of that. So they have
you're
the
talking
two
US
options.
dollars, aren't you?
I'm
talking
talking
US dollars there. Yeah.
I am. And this is the thing too, like with the Wall Street Journal books that I produce, having a Wall Street Journal marketing team is incredibly expensive. And so spots in those books that I create, instead of it being, 1,000 or 2,000, they're 7,500 or 10,000. And it's simply because of the level of competition, the number of people who want to hit that Wall Street Journal bestseller list, and the money that they can put behind the marketing. So it forces us to raise the price so that we can have a first-class team that's guaranteeing that our authors are going to make that list in order to, advance their career and help them help open the doors for where they want to go, whether that's speaking or, contributing on publications, whatever that looks like for them.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people make money from speaking. Sorry, Jeff. Go.
That's a big gravy train, isn't it? Really, when you look at it.
Oh yeah, this, what I often tell women when they come to me is, I don't think most people realize how lucrative publishing is. Even a boutique publishing house can churn a lot of cash. And it's for a few reasons, because people already know they want books, especially entrepreneurs who we typically cater to. It's part of the path. I don't have to convince them. My clients don't have to convince them that it's important. They know they want it. And it's a marketing asset that will work for them for a very long time. And so it can demand a higher price tag.
So would you be more civic towards having a hardcover or the paperback or the e-reader type style of book?
What we do is we do the digital version and the paperback. Hardback is it's like another step in the process. And so we don't always do that. And then the other option that we're going to be incorporating more are the audiobooks.
Yep.
So then we have like the full spectrum of experiences for readers.
I think that audiobooks is really the burgeoning market, because I mean, my dad's 93 years old, and for him to read now is rather difficult. But to be able to listen and get told the story, it's like having children's stories being read to you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I agree. I think that this is the direction where things are going. I recently invested in learning and developing that part of our book, so that going forward that we're definitely hitting that mark, and so that more people can consume and enjoy our books, like you said, even if reading is no longer an easy task.
I do know Australian author Tracy Harding. She put 13 books together in a whole sequence that relate to the same thread of characters, and it's gone to audiobooks. And I got a good friend who is Welsh, and because there's a lot of this Welsh influence in there in terms of the aspect of Merlin and Taliesin, the bards, when this woman who speaks English, her inflection and intonation towards the Welsh words don't hit the mark. And it's quite interesting to see the dynamics of a person who understands that language, hearing it being said in an incorrect fashion. Yeah.
True. And that is one of the important pieces, is making sure that you've got the right person for the job on that.
So we're moving into a new subject here about doing the voice in that. In opera, the male voice, the lowest voice on the whole human scale, is the bass profundo. And when that individual turns up, it's maestro, how much do you want? Because it's a very rare voice. So during conflicts, it's always been the male bass or bass baritone voice that's been used as a voice of authority. And yet when we were kids growing up, we did used to listen on our particular radio station. Stories at 7 o'clock used to come on the radio, which when TV came along, they had the cartoons. So they took the radio, had those little stories. And it was always the high-pitched soprano voice that you would hear when you're a child growing up. So there's a different emotion attached to that childhood when you're growing up. But later in life, when you start hearing the boys, their voice starts cracking and it starts moving down into the tenor voice and into the baritone and the bass. It's a really interesting play on this whole dynamics when it comes to doing where you're going to go with audiobooks, isn't it? It's a bit more Scientology going to it, isn't it?
Oh, yes. There's this whole art to it. Whether it's you want to reflect the author, or you want to cater to the audience, or, like you said, what matches the tone that you want to carry. So, yeah, there are many different aspects that you have to consider that you don't even think about until you're deep into it.
Well, you're in the States, so you've got different annotations of inflections and voices when you got someone from the down south compared to a Shakespearean voice that's been played in New York Broadway.
Oh, definitely. We've got such a range of accents, but I think what I want to do for my next book is have an Australian's accent, because I always say if I had your accent, I would have a completely different life.
Really?
Well, if you go and say, Siri, get me so-and-so, that voice comes from a lady up here in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland.
See there?
There you go.
Yeah. So I got a mate who just rang before, and I said, we're doing a show. Now, when he talks to Siri, he says, Siri, do you love me today?
Oh, my goodness.
Of course, he gets the Australian accent coming along. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Anyway, well, I just thought I could see that story unfolding there, how important it is, because I was in China and we're on a bus, and the lady who was giving us the talk, she was Chinese, and she really took the CCP approach and talked about the imperialism of America and all that stuff. And I had enough of that. And I said, excuse me, do you realise that you talk with an American accent? See that guy there, he speaks with Hong Kong English, he's Canadian English, that's Welsh English, that's Scottish English, that's Kiwi, New Zealand English, this is Australian English, but you got an American buddy English. Well, anyway, when we got back on the bus, he said, oh, excuse me, sir. I realise now I do have an American accent, and the reason is that when I went to university, our professors were from America, so we just imitated their accent.
Wow.
There's a lot of dynamics to it, isn't it?
There's so many layers to this, this global community that we are a part of.
But I think, when certain voices, like the voice of Alan Watts, for example, and I was just thinking the spirit guides, when they communicate with us and the archangels, there's just a depth and a timbre and just a level behind that transcends all of that. So yes, there is all that differences and different connotations and triggering or acceptance, but there is also, I think, a common medium that we can tap into to communicate appealingly to the audience, I guess. So I hope, dear audience, that we've appealed to you and that you've been both inspired and entertained by Adriana, Jeff, and my conversation and exploration with each other. I'm very excited to Adriana, to hear about your guide by my side series. I like the way you've coined that as well. So thank you very much for joining us on Dreaming the New Dream today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Awesome, isn't it? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Good night. Good afternoon, everyone. Good night, Adriana. Thanks a lot. Take care. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.